The morning started like any other across the galaxy. On distant worlds, alien civilizations went about their daily routines. The Zephyrians tended their crystal gardens under twin suns. The mechanical constructors built their endless cities of gleaming metal. In the depths of space, trading vessels carried goods between star systems, their crews chatting over communication channels that spanned light years. Nobody noticed the silence at first. Earth's radio signals have been a constant background hum for decades. Human broadcasts scattered across frequencies like cosmic chatter. Music, news, conversations, and data streams flowed outward from the small blue planet in the Sol system. Most alien species barely paid attention to it anymore. It was just there like stellar radiation or cosmic dust. Commander Thrix of the Galactic Monitoring Station was the first to realize something was wrong. The four-armed being stared at the communication displays with growing confusion. The steady stream of signals from Earth had simply stopped. Not gradually, not with warning signs or distress calls. One moment the humans were broadcasting their usual mixture of entertainment and information. The next moment there was nothing. Thrix checked the equipment twice, then called over his colleague, a floating jellyfish-like creature named Pulex. Together, they ran diagnostics on every sensor array pointed toward the Sol system. The equipment worked perfectly. The problem wasn't on their end. When did the signal stop? Pulex asked, his translucent body pulsing with concern. Thrix scrolled through the data logs. According to this, exactly 47 minutes ago, every transmission from Earth just cut off at the same time. They tried to contact other monitoring stations. The responses came back quickly, all saying the same thing. Earth had gone silent. No radio waves, no digital signals, no communication attempts. The planet that had been broadcasting constantly for over a century was now as quiet as a dead rock floating in space. The news spread through the galactic communication network like ripples in a pond. Within hours, every major civilization knew that something had happened to humanity. Emergency response teams prepared to investigate, though the Sol system was days away even at their fastest speeds. Dr. Yelena Vasquez had been working late in her laboratory in Mexico City when it happened. She was analyzing soil samples from Mars, trying to determine the best locations for future human settlements. The work was exciting, representing humanity's next great leap into the cosmos. She had always believed that humans were destined to spread among the stars, to join the galactic community as equals. In the middle of her analysis, Yelena felt a strange tingling sensation. She looked up from her microscope, noticing that the air around her seemed to shimmer like heat waves. The sensation grew stronger, and she realized with growing alarm that she could see through her own hands. Panic gripped her as she rushed to the mirror across the laboratory. Her reflection was fading, becoming transparent like morning mist. She could see the wall behind her through her own body. The tingling sensation spread throughout her entire being, and she felt weightless, as if gravity had forgotten about her. She tried to call out, but her voice made no sound. Her vocal cords, her lungs, everything was becoming less solid, less real. Yelena reached for her phone to call for help, but her fingers passed through the device like it was made of light. Around the world, the same thing was happening to every human being. In Tokyo, businessman Hiroshi Tanaka felt his body dissolving while sitting in a board meeting. His colleagues watched in horror as he became transparent and then simply wasn't there anymore, leaving only an empty chair. In London, teacher Margaret Thompson was reading a story to her class of young children when she began to fade. The children reached out to touch her, but their small hands passed through where she had been. Their confused cries echoed in the empty classroom. From the International Space Station, astronaut David Chun watched Earth through the observation window when the tingling began. He managed to send one last transmission before his voice faded to nothing. Mission Control, something's happening to me. I can see through my hands. The Earth looks the same, but I think I'm disappearing. His last words were recorded by the automated systems, but no human ears heard them. Throughout the space station, the crew of 6 simply evaporated, leaving their equipment running and their personal belongings floating in the zero-gravity chambers. The phenomenon wasn't limited to Earth. On the moon bases, human colonists felt the same strange tingling. On Mars research stations, on asteroid mining platforms, on the generation ships traveling between stars, every human being experienced the same gentle dissolution. They didn't scream or struggle. They simply faded away like images on old photographs left too long in sunlight. Within the span of 30 minutes, nearly 8 billion human beings had vanished from existence. They left behind empty clothes, running vehicles, and half-finished meals. Their pets waited by doors that would never open again. Their computers continued processing data that no human would ever read. The automated systems kept functioning. Traffic lights changed colors for empty streets. Assembly lines and factories continued producing goods that no one would buy. Satellites orbited Earth, still transmitting data to receivers that no longer had human operators. But the most profound change was the silence. Human voices, which had filled the airways for generations, were gone. The constant background noise of civilization still hummed with machinery and electronics, but the uniquely human sounds had vanished. No laughter, no crying, no singing, no conversation. Earth had become a planet of machines operating in perfect hollow silence. 3 days after the disappearance, the first alien investigation team arrived in the Sol system. Captain Zara, a reptilian hegemony officer, led the survey mission. Her ship approached Earth cautiously, scanning for any signs of what might have happened to humanity. "Life signs?" she asked her science officer. "Negative, Captain. No human biosignatures detected anywhere on the planet or in the system. However, all their infrastructure appears intact. Cities are powered, machines are running, but there are no people." Zara studied the readings with growing unease. In her 40 years of interstellar service, she had seen civilizations destroyed by war, disease, and natural disasters. But she had never seen an entire species simply vanish without a trace, leaving everything else perfectly preserved. "Take us into orbit," she ordered. "Begin detailed scans. I want to know what happened here." As the alien ship circled the silent Earth, its sensors recorded everything. Empty highways stretched between abandoned cities. Farms operated by automated systems continued growing crops that would never be harvested by human hands. The great monuments of human achievement stood unmanned and unvisited. The investigation would reveal no weapons signatures, no signs of struggle, no evidence of disease or disaster. Humanity hadn't been destroyed. They had simply stopped existing, as if the universe had gently erased them from reality without malice or violence. But even in those first few days, before the wider implications became clear, something felt wrong to the alien observers. Earth looked the same, but it felt different. Empty in a way that went beyond the absence of people, as if something vital had been removed from the cosmos itself, leaving behind a gap that would be felt across the galaxy. The universe had lost something important, though none of the remaining civilizations yet understood what that something was. 6 months after humanity's disappearance, the first cracks began to show across the galaxy. What started as a curious investigation into a missing species had grown into something much larger and more troubling. The absence of humans was creating ripples that touched every corner of known space. Ambassador Kethvar of the Centaurian Republic stood before the Galactic Council, her crystalline form reflecting the chamber's soft lighting. For 3 centuries, she had served as a diplomat, helping to maintain peace between dozens of different species. But now, for the first time in her career, she felt genuinely confused about how to proceed. "The hegemony war has resumed," she announced to the assembled representatives. After 18 months of peaceful negotiations, the Scorith Empire and the Hegemony Coalition have returned to military action. Their peace talks collapsed yesterday. A murmur of concern rippled through the council chamber. The war between these two powerful factions had claimed millions of lives before the ceasefire. The delegates had thought that conflict was finally moving toward a permanent resolution. Council Chairman Vex, a tall insectoid being, clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. What caused the breakdown? Our reports indicated both sides were close to a final agreement. Ambassador Kethvar consulted her datapad, though she knew the information by memory. Both sides cite the same reason. They claim the mediation process has become ineffective. The neutral parties they trusted to help guide negotiations are no longer available. Which species was providing mediation? The humans. A heavy silence fell over the chamber. This was the 7th major diplomatic crisis in 6 months where the absence of humans had caused serious problems. The pattern was becoming impossible to ignore. Humans had never been the strongest military force in the galaxy. They weren't the smartest species or the most technologically advanced. Their ships were decent, but not exceptional. Their weapons were effective, but not superior to what other races possessed. On paper, they should have been just another minor species among hundreds. But humans had possessed something unique that no one had fully appreciated until it was gone. They had an unusual ability to understand and connect with other species. When conflicts arose between alien civilizations, humans often served as intermediaries. They could see perspectives that the warring parties couldn't, find compromises that satisfied everyone involved. Dr. Nexus, a collective intelligence made up of thousands of linked minds, had been studying this phenomenon. Her research team occupied an entire space station dedicated to analyzing galactic social patterns. The data they had collected over the past months painted a disturbing picture. Humans served as cultural translators, Dr. Nexus explained to her research assistants, her voice carried through speakers throughout the station. They had an intuitive understanding of how different species thought and felt. When the thermal entities couldn't understand why the ice dwellers found their heat signatures threatening, humans could explain it in ways both sides accepted. Assistant researcher Pix, a small furry creature with large eyes, raised a tentacle. But why were humans so good at this? Many species have studied xenopsychology. That's what makes it so remarkable, Dr. Nexus replied. Humans didn't just study other cultures academically. They seemed to genuinely empathize with them. They could feel what it was like to be a different species, even when that species was radically different from themselves. The research station's main display showed a map of the galaxy with diplomatic incidents marked in red. Before humanity's disappearance, these incidents were scattered and usually resolved quickly. Now, red markers appeared in clusters, and many showed ongoing conflicts with no resolution in sight. On the trading world of Nexus Prime, merchant Captain Jorvok was experiencing the economic impact firsthand. His cargo ship, the Stellar Wanderer, carried goods between 12 different star systems. It had been a profitable route for decades, but lately, business had become increasingly difficult. Jorvok met with his old trading partner, a slug-like being named Glomp, in their usual cantina near the spaceport. Glomp's eye stalks drooped with exhaustion, and his usual cheerful demeanor had been replaced by obvious worry. The cultural exchange markets have completely collapsed, Glomp explained, his translator unit converting his chemical signals into audible speech. Nobody wants to trade artistic works or cultural items anymore. The Melodians won't buy crystalline music. The builders refuse to purchase Zephyrian poetry. Everyone's becoming suspicious of other species' cultural products. Jorvok nodded grimly. He had noticed the same trend. Last month, the thermal entities accused the Melodians of trying to corrupt their youth with dangerous music. There was almost a trade war over a simple song exchange. It's not just trade, Glomp continued. The mixed species colonies are having problems too. Species that lived together peacefully for generations are starting to segregate themselves. They're building separate districts, separate schools, separate everything. What neither merchant understood was that humans had served as cultural bridges in these communities. Human families often adopted alien children. Human teachers worked in multi-species schools. human community leaders organized festivals that brought different races together. Without these connecting links, the various species were slowly pulling apart from each other. The effects reached even into space exploration. The joint research mission to the Andromeda satellite had been abandoned after the hegemony, and Republic crews couldn't work together effectively. The deep space archaeological expedition to the ancient ruins in the Outer Rim had fallen apart when team members from different species began arguing over research methods. Captain Zara's investigation team had been studying human civilization for months, trying to understand not just how they had disappeared, but what role they had played in galactic society. The more they learned, the more concerned they became. "Look at these numbers," Science Officer Quillen reported to his captain. His computer screens showed statistical analyses that painted a troubling picture. Humans were involved in 67% of all successful peace negotiations in the past century. They serve as advisors in 43% of multi-species research projects. They were founding members of 78% of all successful mixed-species colonies. Captain Zara studied the data with growing amazement. They were a small species. Only 8 billion individuals in a galaxy of trillions. How could they have such a widespread influence? "That's what makes this so unusual," Quillen replied. "They weren't leaders or rulers. They served as facilitators. They helped other species work together more effectively. And they did it so naturally that most civilizations didn't even realize how dependent they had become on human mediation. The economic impacts were becoming severe. Trade routes that had operated smoothly for decades were experiencing constant disputes. Multi-species corporations were breaking apart as their alien board members couldn't reach agreements. The Galactic Stock Exchange had lost 12% of its value as investors became uncertain about the stability of interspecies commerce. But the most profound changes were emotional and psychological. Across the galaxy, other species were experiencing something they had never felt before, a deep sense of loneliness. Not the loneliness of being physically alone, but the loneliness of being unable to truly connect with others who were different from themselves. The crystalline entities, who had always taken pride in their logical, mathematical approach to life, found themselves missing the chaotic, emotional energy that humans had brought to their interactions. The thermal entities, despite their fierce independence, felt oddly isolated without human traders and diplomats who had helped them understand other species. On the planet Zeridian, the great library that had been a center of interspecies learning was nearly empty. For generations, humans had served as informal guides, helping visiting scholars from different species understand each other's research methods and cultural approaches to knowledge. Without these bridges, the various alien scholars found it increasingly difficult to collaborate. Librarian Esoth, an ancient being whose lifespan measured in millennia, wandered the empty halls with growing sadness. She had watched civilizations rise and fall, had seen species extinct themselves through war and folly. But she had never experienced anything like this. The galaxy felt smaller, more fragmented, as if an essential connecting tissue had been removed. Young species that had just achieved interstellar travel found themselves struggling to join the galactic community. Without human mentors and cultural guides, they couldn't navigate the complex social dynamics of interspecies relationships. Several promising civilizations had already retreated back to their home systems, overwhelmed by the challenge of communicating with radically different forms of life. The automated monitoring systems on Earth continued their work, but the signals they detected painted a picture of a planet slowly declining without its inhabitants. Gardens died from lack of care. Wild animals moved into abandoned cities. The machinery that kept civilization running was beginning to break down without maintenance. But the most haunting discovery was in the space stations and colonies that humans had inhabited. Their personal belongings remained exactly where they had been left. Photos of mixed-species families. Art created by human-alien collaborative teams. Messages in multiple languages showing the deep friendships humans had formed with other species. These artifacts told a story that the galaxy was only beginning to understand. Humans hadn't just been another species among many. They had been the ones who helped everyone else connect with each other, who made the vast galaxy feel like a community rather than a collection of isolated worlds. As the second half of the first year passed, it became clear that humanity's disappearance had created a wound in the fabric of galactic civilization. The universe was discovering, too late, just how much it had depended on the small, seemingly ordinary species from the third planet of an unremarkable yellow star. 1 year after the Great Silence began, the galaxy held its breath in recognition of a loss so profound that it had taken this long to truly understand its scope. What had started as the disappearance of a single species had revealed itself to be something far more devastating. The removal of the very heart that had kept galactic civilization beating together as one. The Centaurian Archives, the largest repository of galactic knowledge in known space, had become an unexpected memorial. Archivist Prime Kelthera moved through the vast halls where crystalline storage units held the memories and knowledge of 1,000 worlds. But today she was focused on a special section that had grown dramatically over the past year, the Human Documentation Project. Every species in the galaxy had contributed something. The thermal entities had provided recordings of human diplomats who had helped end their ancient war with the ice worlds. The collective had shared data about human researchers who had spent their entire careers learning alien languages, not for profit or advancement, but simply because they found other cultures fascinating. They collected our stories, Kelthera whispered to herself as she reviewed the latest submissions. Her crystalline form pulsed with a deep blue light that indicated profound sadness among her people. Every human we met wanted to learn about our history, our beliefs, our dreams. They were the only species that truly listened. The most heartbreaking contributions came from the mixed-species orphanages that humans had established throughout the galaxy. Video logs showed human families caring for alien children whose own species had abandoned them due to genetic defects or social taboos. These humans had created new forms of family that transcended biology, teaching young beings from dozens of different worlds to see themselves as part of one larger community. Dr. Zeffin of the Melodian Harmony had spent months analyzing human music archives, trying to understand why their songs had been so popular across the galaxy. His people were natural musicians, their entire culture built around sound and rhythm. Yet somehow, human music had touched them in ways their own compositions never had. Human music was imperfect, Dr. Zeffin explained to his research choir. Their voices had limited range compared to ours. Their instruments were simple, but their songs carried something we never learned to include: the emotions of other species. When humans sang about love, they somehow captured what love meant to thermal entities and crystallines and ice dwellers all at once. He played a recording of a human song called Universal Lullaby, written by a human mother for her adopted Zephyrian child. The melody incorporated thermal harmonics, crystalline mathematical patterns, and melodian emotional resonance. It was technically simple, but it had become the most requested song in the galaxy before humanity disappeared. We've been trying to recreate this for months, Dr. Zeffin continued, his voice carrying the harmonic distress patterns of his people. We can copy the notes, the rhythm, the technical elements, but we can't capture the feeling that made it speak to everyone. That ability to understand and express the emotions of other species died with the humans. On the war-torn planet of Skarath, former General Thok stood in the ruins of what had once been a beautiful mixed-species city. The conflict between his people and the hegemony had resumed with brutal intensity after the human mediators vanished. Now, 6 months later, both sides were exhausted and desperate for peace, but they had forgotten how to talk to each other. General Thok remembered the human negotiator who had ended their previous war. Sarah Chun had been a small woman with graying hair and tired eyes, but she had sat in rooms with beings who could have crushed her with a single blow and somehow made them see each other as people rather than enemies. She never told us what to do, Thok explained to his aide. She never imposed human solutions on our problems. Instead, she helped us remember that we all wanted the same things: safety for our families, prosperity for our worlds, a future for our children. She made us realize that our enemy wanted the same things we did. Without human mediators, the various species had tried to negotiate peace using their own cultural methods. The results had been disastrous. The thermal entities approached conflict resolution through dominance displays that terrified other species. The crystallines used mathematical formulas that ignored emotional needs. The collective tried to absorb everyone into group decision-making that felt invasive to individualistic species. Humans have been the only species that could translate between these different approaches, finding ways to honor each culture's values while still reaching practical solutions. They had been universal translators not just for language, but for the deeper patterns of thought and feeling that shaped how different species understood reality. The economic collapse that followed humanity's disappearance had stabilized at a lower level, but the cultural devastation continued to spread. The great universities that had trained scholars from multiple species were closing their interspecies programs. Mixed-species art forms were disappearing as collaborating artists could no longer understand each other's creative processes. Most tragically, the next generation was growing up in a galaxy that felt smaller and lonelier than the one their parents had known. Young beings learned to interact only with their own kind. The natural curiosity about other species that had driven galactic expansion for millennia was being replaced by fear and misunderstanding. Captain Zara had been promoted to head the Galactic Memorial Commission, a new organization dedicated to understanding and honoring humanity's contribution to the galaxy. Her team had analyzed data from thousands of worlds, and their final report painted a picture that astonished even the oldest and wisest species. Humans were present at the founding of 83% of successful multi-species colonies, Zara read from her report to the assembled Galactic Council. They served as cultural consultants in 91% of first contact situations that resulted in peaceful relationships. They were involved in 74% of all interspecies research projects that produced beneficial results. The numbers were staggering, but the personal stories were even more powerful. Every species had tales of humans who had touched their lives in profound ways. The thermal entity who had learned to control his rage after a human teacher showed him meditation techniques. The crystalline scholar who had discovered the joy of poetry after befriending a human artist. The ice dweller who had overcome her species' natural isolation after working with human community organizers. We always thought of humans as a minor species, continued Captain Zara. They had small numbers, limited technology, and short lifespans. But they possessed something that no other species had developed: the ability to see the universe from someone else's perspective. They didn't just tolerate diversity, they celebrated it. They found beauty in differences that other species feared or ignored. The Council had gathered to make a decision about Earth itself. The planet remained untouched since humanity's disappearance, maintained by automated systems that were slowly failing. Some species wanted to colonize it, arguing that the empty world shouldn't go to waste. Others proposed strip mining it for the rare elements that had made human technology possible. But as the year of investigation progressed, a different consensus had emerged. Earth wasn't just another planet. It was a sacred place, the birth world of the species that had taught the galaxy how to be a community. Chairman Vex stood to announce the Council's decision. His ancient voice carried the weight of centuries as he spoke. The planet Earth and its entire solar system will be declared a protected memorial. No colonization, no mining, no commercial activity. The automated systems that maintain human cities and monuments will be upgraded and maintained in perpetuity. Earth will remain as humans left it, a reminder of what the galaxy has lost. The decision was unanimous, something that hadn't happened in the Galactic Council for over 50 years. Even species that had never directly interacted with humans supported the memorial designation. But the memorial would be more than just preserving Earth. Throughout the galaxy, worlds began establishing human remembrance centers. These weren't just museums or archives, but active schools where young beings could learn the arts of empathy and cross-cultural communication that humans had practiced so naturally. The Melodians composed symphonies that tried to capture the harmony humans had created between different species. The Crystallines developed mathematical models of human social networks, marveling at the complex webs of friendship and cooperation that had connected billions of individuals across hundreds of worlds. Most importantly, species throughout the galaxy began trying to learn from human example. Diplomatic corps were restructured to emphasize empathy and cultural understanding. Educational systems started teaching courses in xenoempathy, the art of understanding how other species thought and felt. It was slow work, and many attempts failed. Most species found it incredibly difficult to truly understand perspectives that were radically different from their own. But gradually some progress was being made. Young beings from different species were learning to be friends across cultural barriers. New forms of art and music were being created that spoke to multiple species simultaneously. Dr. Nexus, now the head of the Institute for Cross-Species Understanding, had devoted her collective intelligence to studying human social patterns. Her research had produced training programs that were being implemented across the galaxy. Humans had a saying, she explained to her students, a mixed group of young beings from dozens of different worlds. They said that no one is truly foreign, only their experiences are different. This wasn't just philosophy for them. It was how they lived their lives. They approached every new species, every first contact, with the assumption that they could find common ground. The students listened intently as Dr. Nexus continued. We're trying to learn that same approach. It's not easy for us. Our species evolved to be cautious of differences, to see the unknown as potentially dangerous. But humans somehow overcame those instincts. They made curiosity stronger than fear. As the memorial anniversary approached, something unprecedented was planned, a galaxy-wide moment of silence. For exactly 30 minutes, the same duration as humanity's disappearance, every species would stop their activities and remember what had been lost. When that moment came, trillions of beings across thousands of worlds paused in their daily lives. The great engines of galactic civilization fell silent. Thermal entities dimmed their flames. Crystallines stopped their harmonic resonances. The collective paused their constant mental chatter. In that silence, the galaxy finally heard what had been missing all along. Not just the voices of humans, but the connection between all voices that humans had helped create. The universe had lost its translators, its bridge builders, its teachers of empathy. But in that moment of recognition, something new was born. A commitment to learn what humans had tried to teach them. A promise to honor the memory of the species that had shown them how to be more than just a collection of separate worlds floating in the void. The silence ended, but its message echoed across the galaxy. Humans were gone, but the dream of unity they had nurtured could still survive. It would take generations to learn what humans had known instinctively, but the galaxy was finally ready to try. Earth continued its lonely orbit around the sun, a monument to the small species that had made the vast universe feel like home.